The old man stepped into the saloon just after dawn, boots coated in dust, hat pulled low, his long coat torn at the seams, and even though he didn't speak a word, every eye turned briefly before looking away again. Because in Dry Hollow, strangers were common but rarely welcome, and most folks could smell poverty like smoke. Too many had it themselves, but the gal behind the counter, Anna, saw something else in the way he walked. Straight, not begging, not angry, just tired like a man who'd gone farther than he should have and didn't expect kindness anymore. And when he sat alone at the far table, looking around slow but never meeting anyone's eye, she wiped her hands on her apron, poured him coffee, and brought it without asking, setting it down with a gentle smile. And when he looked up, surprised, she said softly, "On the house, sir," and his voice cracked when he answered, "Coffee's enough, thank you." But she saw his hands trembling slightly and knew it wasn't from age, it was hunger. So she brought him a plate of eggs and biscuits anyway, ignoring the barkeep's glare from across the room. And when the old man reached for his pocket, pulling out nothing but a few copper coins, she shook her head and said, "Someone covered it," even though no one had, because in her heart she believed sometimes kindness had to come first. And the old man nodded once, ate slowly, and left a clean plate and a folded napkin before standing and saying, "You're kind," before walking out into the sun without another word. And she thought that was the end of it until 3 hours later when the mayor burst through the doors red-faced and sweating, followed by two men in crisp coats with gold badges tucked at their hips. And he shouted to the whole saloon, "Has anyone seen a man in a long brown coat, gray beard, limp in his right leg?" And people murmured, glancing at one another. But Anna stepped forward and said, "He had breakfast here." And the mayor's eyes went wide as the men pulled out a folded paper, flashed it, and one said, "That man is Charles Whitlock." And a hush fell across the room because that name hadn't been spoken aloud in years, not since he vanished after the fire took his estate and his wife both in one terrible night a decade ago, and rumors had swirled that he'd gone mad, or died, or run off to Europe. But now he was back, not as a lord or a legend, but as a man with dust on his boots and sorrow in his bones. And Anna's knees felt weak as she whispered, "I thought he was just," but the agent cut her off, saying, "You were kind when no one else was," and then turned to leave, muttering to the mayor, "We'll let him decide who stays and who goes." And for the next few days the whole town buzzed with whispers, wondering why the man had come back and what he planned to do, because it turned out Charles still owned more than half the land in Dry Hollow. Mines, shops, roads, water rights, and most of it had been leased or stolen by greedy hands in his absence, and he had the papers to prove it. And while the rich folk panicked and held meetings behind closed doors, Charles walked the streets alone, stopping to speak to children, helping a blind man cross the road, buying apples from the widow by the mill who never charged him a dime. And each evening, he returned to the saloon, always asking for Anna's table, always leaving 2 silver coins under his plate even when he only drank coffee. And after a week, he came in with a folded envelope, handed it to Anna without a word. And when she opened it later behind the counter, she found the deed to the saloon in her name and a note that read, "For the girl who remembered what it means to give when others only take." And the barkeep almost choked when she told him. And people started coming just to see the girl who fed the man who could have bought the whole county. And that's when the mayor tried to win Charles back, throwing parties, offering him land gifts, even calling him brother in public. But Charles only smiled and said, "I'm here to see who's worthy." And slowly, painfully, he began taking back what was his, not by force but with truth, showing deeds, confronting lies, and holding public meetings where people could speak freely, and those who had stolen or cheated faced not jail but something worse, shame. And they began leaving, one by one, while farmers who had nearly lost their land found their debt forgiven, and schools that hadn't been painted in years suddenly had new roofs, and the well that had been locked behind a fence was now open to all. And through it all, Anna stayed behind that counter, serving meals, cleaning spills, always treating the poor with the same respect as the rich, because she remembered what it felt like to be hungry and alone. And she knew this wasn't just about Charles. It was about the town becoming something better. And then one day, a banker from the city arrived with documents claiming that Charles' signature wasn't valid, that he was too old, too broken, and he tried to sue for control, saying the land should go to the state or back to the banks. But Charles stood before the judge and told the full story of his return, not for revenge or power, but to see if the place he once loved could still remember its soul. And when the judge asked for proof of mental fitness, Anna stood and said, "He remembers every person he's helped, every debt forgiven, every child who smiled at him. Doesn't that count for something?" And the courtroom clapped, not because of law but because of truth, and the judge ruled in his favor, calling him more present than any man I've seen. And the banker left with his papers torn and his pride broken. And the next day, Charles didn't come in for breakfast, and Anna grew worried. Walking out to the house he'd built with his own hands, a small cabin near the woods with a front porch facing east, and she found him there, eyes closed, hands folded, a faint smile on his lips, and the coffee cup she'd given him years ago sitting beside him on the rail. And she knew he was gone, peaceful, finished, and the funeral was the biggest the county had seen, with children holding flowers, mothers whispering prayers, and old men wiping tears from their whiskers. And when it was done, Anna returned to the saloon and found a second envelope waiting under the table. Inside was another note in the same careful hand. "Keep feeding them, Anna. The town still needs you." And so she did, opening the saloon early for farmers and closing late for the sick and tired, never raising prices, always saving the corner table for a stranger who might be more than he seemed. And when tourists came and asked to see the famous girl, she'd smile and say, "It wasn't me. It was the eggs." But everyone knew the truth, that it was her heart that changed the town, not the breakfast. And when she was older and gray-haired herself, she trained the young ones to serve with kindness first, saying, "We don't feed people for their coins. We feed them for their stories." And the children understood, because stories were what kept Dry Hollow alive, not money. And when Anna passed, they put her name on the plaque next to Charles's. Two names carved in gold above the door. The drifter and the girl who fed him. And no one ever sat at that table without thinking about what one simple act of kindness could lead to.